just doing a bit of, we're just questioning a few people about the, we want to know what people think about the incidents in Paris, the Charlie Hebdo magazine, and on Sunday there was actually a freedom march where over 1 million people walked through the streets of Paris. Can I just say, I love you, babe.
I love yours, mate. Yeah, great love. There you go. Anyway,
yeah, and 1 million people walked through the streets of Paris in aid of freedom of speech to show that they want to have freedom of speech, freedom of expression. I just want to know what you think of that, if you agree with freedom of speech or freedom of expression, and to what limits there should be, or should there be limits, or what limits should they be if they should be.
Freedom of speech is incredibly important. We wouldn't be where we are today without freedom of speech. You know, it's all the way through history, and even back to the ancient times, freedom of speech and people saying what they feel and standing up for what they think is right is fundamentally a human trait that is extremely important.
How do you feel about freedom of speech? Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with freedom of speech, because I think if we don't continue to express ourselves the way we want to, then obviously we're just giving in to terrorists.
So do you agree with full freedom of speech, that there shouldn't be any limits of freedom of speech?
I think there should be limits. I think when you're actually even intentionally hurting others, then I think that obviously you should think more about what you're going to say. But I think that if you're just giving out your opinion on particular things, then I don't really think that's bad. Even if, you know, we don't all agree with your opinion, I still think that opinions need to be heard.
Do you think people should be allowed to have freedom of speech?
Of course they should.
Yeah? Freedom of speech with no boundaries, where you're free to say whatever you want?
Yeah.
I mean,
but there is limits.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
What limits would they be?
Obviously, there'd be some sort of limits to do with some sort of explicit, maybe a bit of
upsetting people, harming people. I mean, I agree with you. That's a good.
Because when people do freedom of speech, when you do something, it goes global. And everybody can hear it, they can listen to it.
And it's not fair if you're upsetting someone and bullying someone. For instance, we wouldn't accept racism, would we?
No, not at all.
If someone was to harm somebody or do videos or cartoons in a racist way, we wouldn't accept that, would we?
No, not at all.
I think there should be limits. I don't believe you should never have anything racist, and that should be removed out of society. What colour, race, we're all the same, literally. But there should be more harmony.
Out of respect. Say I respect you. Why should I say something that would upset you?
Exactly.
Unless I was being a bit off.
Exactly.
Now I've got the right to. But if I do, am I being compassionate to you?
It's not fair, is it?
It's not right for me just to say I can say anything, but should I say anything? There's some things that are politically incorrect to say. So why should I be free to say anything if it's going to cause offence?
What do you think about freedom of speech?
I think it's a good idea. It's a good idea.
Are you sure? Do you think freedom of speech is good?
Yeah.
Full freedom of speech? No limits?
It lets the people express what they want to say, but obviously there can be limits. I mean, people can't go around putting up hate signs and
So you agree that people should express themselves, but they shouldn't hurt others?
Yeah, but not go over the top.
About freedom of speech, whether you think it's a good thing, or do you think it has to have limits?
Well, no. I think it's a good thing. You've got to have freedom of speech to express yourself. I mean,
well, we're in a democracy. I feel people invading each other's space, but that shouldn't be like it. Whether you're Muslim, Jew, Christian, we're all alike. Literally, we do go to the same place.
I'd just like to know what your understanding of freedom of speech is, and whether you agree with freedom of speech. Does it have to have limits? Should it have limits? What do you think?
Wow, it's a really big question. So my understanding of freedom of speech is just basically that every human has the right to say whatever they're thinking at any given time. Which I definitely do agree with. I absolutely do, especially in the case of the Charlie Hebdo magazine, which is just, something something out there for I don't want to say frivolous, because frivolous is the wrong word, but it's not hurting anyone.
I mean, would you say the same about say for racist remarks? Would you say that that's not hurting anyone?
This is the problem. It's the limit, isn't it? It's such a big question. It's hard.
So you agree that it does need limits?
I think in certain circumstances, yes, it does. It does need limits.
Don't you think there should actually be limits to freedom of speech? I mean, if you're insulting someone, for instance, David Cameron came out with a statement this week where he said he wants to defend the right to insult people. I mean, where's the limits? I mean, does that mean now racism is allowed and we can just post anti-Semitic posts online and is this acceptable? I mean, personally, what do you think?
Acceptable is in the eye of the beholder, to be honest with you. People will take offence to anything that is normal. It's all to do with moral boundaries, to be honest with you. People know what's going to cause a reaction. A lot of people say it because they're going to get a reaction and they feel there's no. I think in terms of what people can get away with, potentially it is slightly more than they should. Repercussions wise, it seems to be not much. People can post, especially online with the media now, you can say whatever you want really, without any fear of any backlash.
David Cameron came out with a statement the other day saying that he wants to defend people's right to actually insult people. Now, do you think this is actually within the bounds of freedom of speech?
Not if it provokes things, that's what's happened, no.
Yeah.
It depends, there's boundaries to it in there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So do you believe that people should have the right to total freedom of speech?
To an extent, as long as it doesn't provoke things, what's happened.
Yeah. So as long as it doesn't upset people or harm people?
Of course, yeah, there's a line, isn't there? And when you cross that line, like the magazine, the new one they're bringing out, apparently they're putting Mohammed whatever back on the front of it again. Yeah. It's just going to provoke more anger, isn't it? So
do you think that's right?
Once you know it's wrong and you've overstepped a line, you don't do it again. It's as simple as that.
I mean, if we have total freedom of speech, does that mean that now we can shout racial abuse at people and anti-Semitic marks and maybe things against Christianity and Muslims and whoever knows, other people? I mean, should there be a limit to freedom of speech?
I see where you're coming from with the cartoons. This is where you're coming from with the cartoons.
Not just the cartoons. I mean, everything really. I mean, we can see it totally.
You can't go shouting things like that are going to offend people. No. Because it's just going to cause violence.
I guess so. I mean, I wouldn't want to stop anybody from saying anything, but if what you have to realise is that your words have consequences.
Yep.
So if you're promoting, racism, and then somebody attends your seminar or whatever, and then they go off doing stuff, and not everybody's doing it. So if you incite racial hatred and violence in a seminar, and then everybody in that seminar then goes off and starts hitting people and starts being racially abusive to people, then yeah.
So how would you define the line? I mean, is it if people say that
if you're discriminating someone or something like that, then fair enough. Obviously, you should have freedom of speech in regard to you can say what you like to an extent, but then when you're affecting other people or you're harming other people, that's where the line's drawn, isn't it? Simple as that.